Welcome to Hoops Lounge.
Welcome back. How you doing today, Mark?
I'm good, man. I'm here with Sporting Phil.
Bringing you a little NBA talk today.
Week 2 of the NBA playoffs.
Crazy week. A lot of big news. Injuries kind of hitting the front.
Well, I mean, we saw it coming a bit with the short schedule, but we're going to go a little bit off tangent today. We're going to talk about unsung heroes.
Exactly. We have a lot of unsung heroes in these playoffs, as we've had for years. Some good names, especially this year, if you want to kick it off. Name that's coming to both mind, James Harden. Any thoughts on this bearded wonder from OKC?
Well, besides the hipster look, I mean, he does it all. I mean, this is a team with two superstars in Durantula and in Westbrook, but really for me, the core of this team, kind of the heart and soul of the team is Harden. He does all the little things, especially coming off the bench, having no ego, just like, you know what, I want to win. He plays defense well. He can score when he wants to. He's efficient on offense and on defense. And you know what? He just does it. He'll dive for a ball. He does things that, you know, kind of the coach loves, the fans love, and he just gets it done.
I think it's important on a team that has, you know, this many superstars. When you have Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook, you can't have a third guy coming in and demanding huge shots. You have to have a guy who can play within and not disrupt those main players in there every day. And I think that is really what he brings. But I think we've seen a lot of these kind of other players in past history, in current day. What's another one that maybe sticks out to you as maybe one of these unsung of maybe, you know, yesteryear, maybe guys who aren't playing with us today?
Well, I mean, it's kind of a formula for any championship team to have these kind of third or fourth role players. And, I mean, we were talking a bit off camera earlier, but Scottie Pippen has always been in the minds of many as being one of those guys who, despite whatever, 5 or 6 rings, he never got as much kind of hoopla as a Michael Jordan.
Well, he's always playing behind the great one, right? So everyone thinks he's kind of dragging him through the titles. But really, you know, as we said, this guy has as much talent as many of the guys who won rings almost on their own.
I mean, look at the year when Jordan was away from just off playing baseball. What was Scotty's stats like?
Oh, he was over 20 points. I mean, we're talking about his year after he left, after he retired the year before they got Jordan. This guy's a 20-point scorer, all defensive world player. This guy pretty much does everything, and really, you go to question, would Jordan have won these titles without Scottie Pippen?
I don't think so, and you can even look at Pippen when he played for the Portland Trailblazers later on in his career. He was such a leader, and even still a defensive stopper that time in his career. The guy had all these tools, and he just knew when and where to use them, very much like James Harden.
Exactly. Another modern-day player I like to compare to is actually Luol Deng of the Chicago Bulls. This is a guy who I feel he's gotten a little bit of a bad rap over the years. You know, people are saying ever since he signed his 50-year, 5-year deal, he's overpaid, tough contract to move. But really, this is a young, athletic, 6'9", small forward who's really accepted his role as the second or third fiddle on that Chicago team. He's learned a three-point shot. He's become their best wing defender. I mean, guys like this not only, you know, have the talent, but really it's understanding how you fit in the team.
Right, it's not a me-first attitude that these guys, that's the core of who they are. They put the team first. Mm-hmm. And like I said, this is a coach's dream to have a guy like this on your team, and they're worth every penny because they step up when a Derrick Rose is injured. They know what they have to do and when.
Well, that's it. I mean, without these guys, your superstars wouldn't shine. And there's players like this all throughout the league, and they often are the difference between teams that don't make it and teams that are. I mean, a team like San Antonio, you could say, is almost filled with these players, right? I mean, how many players on San Antonio right now are actually superstars right now? Maybe Tony Parker, but really, he's even in the conversation. Is he even the 5th best point guard in the playoffs?
No, I mean, he's not even really in the MVP conversation that much, even though he's having a career year right now. But it's because the Spurs have always been this kind of small market, despite, 5 titles, they're off the radar. And so you have this team full of guys like Ginobili who are just like, they do their job, they do it well. Popovich knows how to coach them, and he just got Coach of the Year.
Well, I mean, it all goes about good scouting, right? It's understanding value, because you can always overpay for a player that was deemed a superstar. I mean, we remember David Lee from the Knicks going to the Golden State, having that outrageous contract, and now people are saying, you know, is it worth it, this and that. But the thing is, it's often these $5, $6, $7 million contracts. These guys maybe don't even come off the bench, maybe are starting, but really just come in. And, you know, Tyson Chandler, before he signed that big contract in New York, was that guy in Dallas.
That's true.
Right? He came in and he understood his role. I mean, on a team with Dirk Nowitzki, with Vince Carter, they didn't have Vince Carter at the time, with Sean Marion, Jason Kidd, Jason Terry. They had so much talent. You didn't need a guy to come in and grab shots. You needed a guy to understand his role, play high IQ basketball, and really just dominate the paint like he did.
I want to go back to '99 because that was. I mean, this year is mirroring what '99 was because of the two shortened years.
Exactly.
And that year, the Knicks, as the 8th seed, made it all the way to the finals against the Spurs, the first year of their dynasty. And guess who the big X factor was in the Knicks that year? Marcus Camby. He was 6th man off the bench. Ewing was injured. And that guy, he's 36 years old now. Yeah. He still is just, despite never being an all-star, the guy just knows how to get it done. He's one
of the best defensive players in the league, has been for a while, despite on most nights being outweighed by the opponent. He's dealt through injuries, but it's just those guys, these are often, I mean, we can go all the way down to the line like your Shane Battiers and your Tony Allens of Memphis. These are the guys who doesn't always show up on the stat sheet. Sometimes they do, like Luol Deng, like we mentioned, and Harden are averaging about 16 plus points, but they don't always. But these are the guys, if you really want to take your Moneyball approach to building a team, are really the guys you want to spend your dollars on, and maybe not looking at these big names like Carmelo's, but rather flipping it around and getting your guys like Wilson Chandler and Danilo Gallinari. I know this is tough for New York Knicks fans to stomach because they traded these guys, but you had to throw a Melo joke in there somewhere. But it's really about taking the money you have and being a smart GM, because these glue guys and these guys who as we said, they don't necessarily have elite skills anywhere, but they don't make mistakes. They're very solid on everything, and I think there's value to that.
Right. I was having a conversation with a friend the other day, and we're talking about all these great players who, they'll have a few rings or whatnot, but have never been an all-star. One of those that my friend brought up that I'd never really thought of, Robert Horry. He's got 5, 6 rings, something like that.
Big shot Bob,
He's never been an all-star.
No, he's never been an all-star, but the thing is, him and Derek Fisher, when they played for the Lakers,
Derek Fisher, another one.
I mean, obviously, Horry between the Rockets, Spurs, Lakers, he's been big for a lot of teams, but these are guys who don't necessarily play, at a high level all game, but when it matters, they step up. Yeah. And it's really understanding, because you could look at a guy like Robert Horry and say, he doesn't really rebound, doesn't really have a low post game, so where's his value? But understanding the value of his basketball IQ and what he brings to your team come crunch time.
I'm looking at, kind of looking to next year going forward, and I'm looking at Minnesota, and there's so many great guys. They're 10 deep. There's a few teams that are 10 deep. But Minnesota's got this kind of philosophy on their team where they're like, we're just going to kind of glue together. I know Kevin Love is really kind of the leader, and Rubio's just saying, I'm going to get you the ball. And that's one thing, to have a team where everyone's like, we're going to give the ball to the next free man, and he's going to score.
Well, I kind of thought their philosophy was more stack up on swing forwards and point guards. Well, but I can see where you're going that way. I mean, it's not their fault they have David Kahn as the GM, right?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's just madness, but we'll get into that another day. But just the philosophy, I'm going to get you the ball, we're going to pass it around, everyone's going to score.
It's making the extra pass. It's finding the guy. It doesn't necessarily matter that you're Kobe Bryant. If you have a Ron Artest open for a 10-footer, you make that pass, which doesn't always happen. But that's good coaching, and that's high IQ basketball. The Spurs are kings of that. You see that again with the Indiana Pacers. You see that again with the 76ers. I mean, sometimes not having these stars allows you to make smart decisions where it's not based on ego and paycheck, right?
Well, I mean, you could go back to college basketball. There's kind of a purity of that, where it's like, we're not under contract here. We just want to win a title. And you can go to high school, what have you. It's just the philosophy, 5 guys on the court playing as one. And, we're seeing a bit of that in the NBA right now, and it's kind of a renaissance going back to where the game came from.
Yeah, I really agree. And what I really like is how teams who are doing the opposite and stacking up with just those stars are failing. I mean, in some regards, such as your Miami Heat, they have too much talent to lose outright. Yeah. But we're seeing how teams like the Knicks, and when you don't...
I knew he was going to go to the Melo. Yeah.
I don't know. I just can't go back. It bothers me too much how they're put together. They don't make enough sense to me. Yeah. Yeah. But I just mean like when you only have a few huge pieces, that meshing and chemistry, dealing with those huge egos, it's brutal. But when you have a couple of those, if you have a team full of those second players, you have depth, you have less ego, you have chemistry. I mean, I just think, that should be a small market mantra. If you're a small market, don't go for those big guys. Yeah. If you get a great deal at home, home field advantage, the guy wants to come home and play for you, sure. But the thing is, maybe go for that, player who's seen as a little bit less. We saw the example with Wesley Matthews in Portland, how they let him go in Utah a couple years back.
Right.
Now he's your starting shooting guard, 15 points a game, plays great D, hits threes. You know what? Is he a Brandon Roy? No, but would he start on most teams? Yes. I mean, they're those little value guys, and that's really what is the difference. And I think through these playoffs, we're going to start seeing, especially with the shortened season, as you mentioned,
and the injuries,
these deep teams who are able to come back from players being tired, players being on the bench, and injuries. You know, the Bulls are lucky that they have Watson off the bench, but as we saw, they're in a tailspin.
Yeah.
And Drew Holiday's eating them up because they don't have Derrick Rose to guard him. So there's definitely this kind of argument of quantity versus quality.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think this is really gonna be one of those years where it comes to shine. And I think this whole labor agreement that started before this year.
Right.
I mean, I think the people who are going in this are loving this because the owners really didn't want to see these big stars having all this power. And when you shift to a culture that has more of a team dynamic, as an owner, you have to love it, right? Because you don't have to deal with these egos. Because you can say, "Hey, Carmelo, go home." Okay, I'll be nice. Amari, go home. I'll lay off him. But instead of paying $16 million for you, I'll pay $7 for him and $8 for you, and these guys will play all 48 minutes. I won't have to deal with you punching a fire extinguisher.
Yeah. Well, Amari. It's an interesting story from whenever people talk about Amari doing weird things. There's a story I read in this great book called 7 Seconds or Less. It's about the Phoenix Suns in around 2005, 2006. And Amari came into practice one day wearing a Rolling Stones t-shirt. And Alvin Gentry, who's now the coach but was assistant coach at the time, goes, "Amari, do you even know one song by the Rolling Stones?" He goes, "Sorry, dude." So Amari just kind of, he lives in his own world, but
he's one of those guys who brings the fans. And I don't blame the Knicks for signing him at the start. They had no one. They wanted that first piece. Yeah. And to be honest, until they made the Denver trade, he was working out 25 points a game.
Yeah. There was one more role player I was going to bring up. I can't think of it.
But really, there's a plethora of these guys, and I think it's just the team that has almost the most that can deal with this.
And of course, it's coaching too, right? If you have the right coach, say a Mike D'Antoni. I forgot to talk about Sean Marion. Now, the Matrix is one of those guys who just can play 4 or 5 roles. A handful of guys in history can actually do that. And part of his issue in Phoenix was always, I'm third man. I kind of want to be MVP. I kind of want to be the man. I kind of want to get more attention. But I also want to win.
He wants to play team ball.
Yeah, so he was always kind of caught in the middle of all this. And I think that's part of the reason they never won it. There was just kind of a flux of just not knowing where they wanted to be with that team.
Well, I think that's interesting. You're speaking of Phoenix, because his best days were in Phoenix. I remember those playoff days. He'd go from guarding Dirk Nowitzki in the post to guarding Tony Parker down low. He would be their best defender who could play 4 positions. But he's only starting to become really pronounced now that he played for Dallas, being a world champion.
Yeah.
But really, in Phoenix, he was flawless. He would shoot 50%. He could shoot threes. He would hit his free throws. He was one of the most athletic wings in the game. Played defense. A heady guy. You don't have to create any shots for him. I mean, honestly, players like that, I would argue if they didn't have him, that team would have been nowhere near as good, even with Amari and Nash.
I mean, Nash was the engine, but he was the tires. So, I mean, the car's not going to go anywhere without him. So
exactly.
That's all I got for Unsung Heroes.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I mean, I think we've covered a bunch of these guys. If you have any thoughts, leave comments below on our YouTube page, or send us an email at hoopslounge@gmail.com.
Twitter.
Yeah.
Montreal Marc.
Sporting Phil, hit us up. We'd love to hear from you. And if you have any ideas for future shows you'd like to bring it up. And we'll see you next week.
See ya.